So, hello, Adam.
Hi, Georgie.
Lovely to see you here. And thank you because you got in touch with me to say you'd love to tell your recovery story. I think that's lovely because it can help so many people hearing recovery stories from other people. So, I know we were in touch. Did you say just now 6 years ago? Is that when
I
it
think
all
it was
started for you?
2017 was yeah, quite a highlight after having back surgery, but we were in Australia and I called you from there. Yeah, I had an
Right.
initial
So, what
consultation.
brought you to that point then? When did you start with pain? And do you want to just give me a brief history of what happened up to that point?
Yeah, sort of capture it really in a timeline, I suppose, from 2000 to about 2016, there were
Mhm.
bouts of low back pain that were so bad, probably about 5 or 6 bouts in that time where I was off work for 2, 3 weeks.
Right.
Couldn't really walk much at all, and the worst point just before 2016 was so 2015, the summer of 2015. I was bedroom bound for 3 weeks. I couldn't even get down
Wow.
the stairs. I was in so much agony. So yeah.
So can I ask you then, you say you had those bouts. What do you, I mean, at the time, what did you put them down to? Were you, I know you enjoy rugby, you've not actually said where,
Mm.
do you play rugby? Or did
Yeah,
you?
not new, bit old now, but yeah, I did play. Yeah, played competitively. So played for
Right,
the I'm ex-army. I was a physical training instructor in the army, and then was with the police for 6 years when I
right.
got out. I've always been in physical job roles, physical
Yes,
training, teaching, and that sort of thing.
it's
And
good to know. Mm,
yeah, so the rugby, to answer your question, I put it down to the
that's what I
rugby.
want.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, this is the structural problems, obviously, which we'll get to at some point, and really getting to the point was exactly that, around about 2016, where I saw no other route out of it
Mhm.
than to seek having back surgery.
So before that point, then, when you were blaming it on the rugby,
Mm.
was did the pain come on while you were playing rugby, or was it usually something that came on afterwards? Or
Yeah, there was never really any pain
uh,
during the rugby, and not even afterwards, 2 or 3 days after, and not even as I was getting older and still playing occasionally. And that was the interesting thing, though I didn't make any connection to that back then,
no,
but just thought, well, it has to be that. It can't
must be
possibly
that.
be anything
Yeah,
else. Yeah, yeah,
yes, like we do, because if we don't understand that our environment and our minds and emotions
mm,
can have an impact on pain or even trigger pain, how can we even consider that? And that's where I was
mm,
sort of for a few years leading up to, well, before coming up to this work and coming across
mm,
in 2007. But I had begun to question, which is why for me it was like, oh, wow, yes, I get it. Because I was looking for an answer because it doesn't make sense, does it? So you
no,
suddenly develop this back pain that makes you bedridden,
mm,
but actually you might have played rugby before then without any problem.
yeah,
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So carry on. So you ended up then going to see a specialist, presumably.
Yeah, the neurosurgeon, and but it didn't help. I mean, that was the May of 2016. In October, we migrated to Australia.
So was
Uh,
this sorry, did you was this surgery before you went to Australia or you saw the
yeah,
neurosurgeon?
yeah.
Right.
It was
Okay.
it was 5 months before, and I can remember at one point going to have a medical before we even got through that process, and
Right.
really panicking, thinking I'm not going to get through this medical, and sort of like shimmying onto this bed, and they were saying, "Oh, are you okay? Yeah, yeah, I'm fine, thanks." And really bluffing my way to get through the thing, but I was in still in some considerable pain, and so yeah,
Right.
but nothing really helped, not even the
So what
surgery.
what was the surgery that you had?
So here was a microdiscectomy and laminectomy at L4, L5, L5S1. And yeah, I got in for that surgery. It was only about a couple of hours early in the morning. I was over in Cambridge living then, and I was back home in the afternoon.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I would say over about 6 weeks, I started to see some. I mean, I was in agony, so from agony to some improvement, and
Right.
thinking that I was on the path to recovery. But it was quite clear to me after about 2 or 3 months, and then the impending migration to Australia,
Mm.
the pain came back, and it was much worse than it ever was. So. It was a worry. I knew that I had compressed discs, as the MRI scan had told me, um,
Mm.
but without sort of jumping ahead too far, in Australia, I'd gone back to see a surgeon, and what, a year and a bit later, the MRI scans were exactly the same, and it was really at that point I knew that that this is not going to heal me. There has to
Mm,
be something else. And
mm,
it was then that I came across Vita yoga teacher in
mm.
Australia, John Sarno's work, and then your work,
Right.
and Schubiner and
Yeah,
Hanscom and so many other people, and that's led me to where I am today, really. But yeah,
excellent. And when you think about it, if you have a compression surgery, if the compression is believed to be the cause of your pain, you would expect that to be relieved quite soon
yeah,
after surgery, wouldn't you? If not immediately.
absolutely, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and, and yet for you to then get worse when obviously that compression is resolved.
Yeah, and if anything, the pain shifted into my neck, my shoulder.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I
How
was
did they
getting.
explain that?
Well, they couldn't. Yeah, they couldn't. And I had a lot of pins and needles then, and some discomfort down my glutes and my hamstrings, which I'd never really had before. The
Hmm.
pain was contained prior to the surgery in my back, but everything seemed to go elsewhere. But I think, well, I know now that I was panicking and causing, the
Yeah.
symptoms making them even worse.
And
And
as Dr. Sani used to call them, symptom imperatives. So you'd
yeah,
had the surgery on your spinal pain. So, oh, where else can you do pain?
yeah, and that was the
Not
thing
quite
that
like
went
that.
from one side to the other side, and I'd never had it on the other side before. I thought, well, how is this possible? It actually, coming to that realization, Georgie, for me, I would say, made me, big lump like me, I broke down in tears. I was emotional because it was at that point that I'd realized that I really had been driving my own pain for a longest time. Clearly, there was some psychological unprocessed things that had happened in my life prior to that, which thankfully, have helped me now to be where I am today. I didn't know that then until I
No.
started reading John Sarno's work. So, but it was quite upsetting to realize that, to get to that
Yes.
moment and think the surgery hasn't worked, the lumbar injections haven't worked all along this way, and now I realize I'm driving my own pain. That's quite hard to take,
Yes.
as
But
well
but
as
you were driving it without realizing, based
unconscious.
on generally the Western world's understanding of chronic pain.
Yeah,
Um, so it's about then actually acknowledging, thank goodness you did acknowledge how you're feeling,
yeah,
and then start to rationalize it
mhm.
and forgive yourself for doing so. I mean, I often think this about, when we talk about bringing up children. Do you have children?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I often think about this, and we say that this is nothing about blame. We do
mhm,
what we do because based on our experiences in life and our
mhm,
understanding at that point. And so it's about acknowledging and dealing with, let's say, childhood stuff. But I
mhm.
remember saying to my children, I'm so sorry for all that I did to you as a child when you were children. But you know all about this now. You can deal with it. But little things like,
Yeah,
the naughty step and things, sending them to the room where they're angry,
yeah,
that's what happened to me.
mhm,
Trying to control them because that's how we were treated, and all
yeah,
treated the same because that was the understanding at the time. And
mhm,
it's about then learning to be very self-compassionate and forgiving of ourselves, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah.
That was really helpful, coming across people like Kristen Neff's work and Chris
Mm.
Germer and people like that. That thought that sounded a bit wishy-washy to me a few years ago. I'm embarrassed to say now, but honest enough. But absolutely vital when you're in that loop of sort of beating yourself up and ruminating, and to
Mm.
then take your time out and think, well, actually, I would speak to you very nicely. Why am I speaking to myself in the complete opposite way?
Yes.
And almost like relearning that, as
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. So if anybody's listening to this and they don't know about Kristen Knapp,
Mm,
that's NEFF, then it's about self-compassion, which is self.
yeah.
It's a beautiful word. So when you came across Dr. Simon's work, could you immediately start? Were you one of these people who considered first what was going on in your childhood, and then were you one of these people that felt, well, I had a happy childhood, or was it easy for you to look at it and recognise, yeah, I can see why this may be playing a part,
Mm.
as well as then looking at what was going on in your life when the pain, when those bouts came in, for example.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, I was also one of those people at that time to get pain relief. I mean, not complete pain relief from just reading the books, and then that blew my mind. I thought, how can that be? but that was already the process starting to kick
Yes.
in, and rethinking things, and well, obviously rewiring as well.
And feeling
Um,
safer, beginning to, the
Absolutely.
fear goes, doesn't it? Thinking, oh my God, my back's broken and this
Mm,
is going to get worse, and all the things you've been told. And actually,
yeah.
reading a book like this just lifts that. And it's like a real letting go, and your primal brain feeling safer, so you don't
Mm.
need the pain.
No, I couldn't get enough of it. I literally, it was like, park all the medication, pick up all the books, and it was literally the divided mind. Healing back pain. I think 3, 4, 5 book of his books, and then others
Mhm.
like Human Is It Your Own, and it was just but you're right though. In what I was able to look back and think, actually some of the experiences in the army. I've lost a couple of pals and stuff in Northern Ireland, and I'd never really had any therapy or anything. You see, so just trying to carry on and soldier on and stuff like that, and so
Soldier on.
yeah, classic, really, and and
Yeah.
and perhaps more typically blokish, not really containing all
Mm.
the emotions, not crying in front of people, which was,
Yeah.
and then learning about, the drivers linked to our values systems, and be
Mhm.
strong, be perfect, don't be late, be on
Yes.
time. So all that stuff was just all knowledge acquisition. But no, I was able
Mm.
to look back to the childhood and the army experiences and think, oh, blimey, hang on a minute.
Mm.
There's a lot of significant emotional stuff here that's not been dealt with. Is it any wonder now that I've read Sarno's work, and that almost the body was like a pressure cooker and it had
Yes.
to go somewhere? And clearly for me, it was into the lower back region,
Mm.
which, yeah, I
Mm.
wasn't surprised at, having read some of that foundation work. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned about this self-compassion.
Mm.
What else did you use? So, for example, addressing the army stuff, did you use journaling to help with that? Did you use
Yeah.
therapy?
Again, I mean, I love writing, but I'd never really written with that sort of purpose. So yeah, started doing quite a bit of journaling, had some counseling and some psychotherapy. I had some bereavement counseling initially, even though the losses were like 15, 20 years prior to. But again, I'd never had that, so never processed. So it was quite
Yes.
useful.
Wow. Was
Yeah,
that a
yeah.
big thing for you to do? Because I know for many men,
Mm.
especially because of the beliefs they have, they find it quite challenging to benefit from it.
Very much so. And I've gone full circle. I mean, I'm now training in my third of four years to be a
Yeah.
psychotherapist, well, integrative therapist, counselor and psychotherapist. So,
Fabulous.
but no, back then it was big boys don't cry, to coin a phrase from a song, get on with it. So it was
Mm.
but once I made that move, and again, reading, watching endless YouTube clips and TED talks, and all these positive messages, and listening, the TMS stuff,
Yeah.
those groups, and so much support and love and
Mm.
the want to help people, which has, delivered me to where I am
Yes.
doing this,
Yes.
and what my change in profession as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So you came back from, how long were you in Australia for?
We were only there about a year and a half.
Right.
Missed the kids too much, so we came back. I don't think they
Right.
missed us as much as we missed them, but yeah, that was the main driver for coming back, and I've worked ever since, my day job, if you like, with Macmillan Cancer Support. So I'm more in the teaching and learning area, but it's valuable work, and
Mm.
and my specific area is about sort of cancer and mental health. So, and I see a number of different people and families in those spaces. So
Yes. So
yeah,
with this understanding, you can help with that as well.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
just imagine the emotions that have been triggered by either you yourself having cancer or a family member having cancer.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think it's just lovely to know that this understanding can help everybody, not just people
Mm,
who have chronic pain or another system condition.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So a real roundabout circle for you now, and from what I understand, training in counselling and psychotherapy, so you can then start using this work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, trauma specifically, given, and I'm doing research into that specifically around, initially about the impact it's had on me, and the
Mm.
difficulties we've just spoken about of not being open, and or
Yes.
scared, been frightened. I think you hit the nail on the head for me, really, where you said about, because it is about that central nervous system, that feeling
Mm.
of feeling safe. And I hadn't realized, but I was in this fight, flight, freeze
Yes.
space for so many
Yes.
years, so
Mm.
to be able to help people and sit with people and do this, if you like, and make them feel comfortable and safe. I know from own experience and listening to others, that on its own, without any other intervention,
Yes.
helps.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely. Yes. And this is not an intellectual conscious approach, is it? You've said yes, you did all the reading.
mm,
And that's great because education was the first step, and that understanding of starting to change our beliefs. But we do need to change those beliefs.
mm,
And that understanding and conscious stuff is great to start with. And you were one of those people who the pain started resolving with reading the books, but it was on an unconscious level, wasn't it?
mm, yeah,
So, you can't say, oh, I understand this now. Let's switch off those pain pathways. This is about having a deep aha moment. And those people who don't have those deep aha moments are less likely for the pain to settle down. And those deep aha moments with, yes, reprogramming the brain, but
mm,
also with the brain, the primal brain, just suddenly, okay,
mm,
I don't need to protect you anymore.
no,
Let's feeling safer. And as the safer you feel, the less pain you need to protect you from
absolutely.
falling apart emotionally, let alone anything else.
Yeah, I have a lovely example, George, I'd like to share very briefly with you on that. After all the learning, and having no pain, I haven't. I'll talk about that in a minute. But that, that comes and goes a little bit. It's not to say that,
Yeah.
but a lovely example is some years after, probably about 3 or 4 years after. So before the pandemic, then let's use that as a marker.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember getting up, and I'll do it to demonstrate now. So if I can do it now, I'll just get up from the chair, and I'll go like this. So, and it was all in my face. And my wife said to me one day, "Oh, are you okay? Is your back okay?" And this is the wider effect on the whole family when,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
state I was in. And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "Oh, you winced quite heavily when you got up out of the chair." So I didn't even know I was in no
Mm.
pain. So that was that programmed sort of response for
Yes.
many years of getting up out of a chair and being physically in pain and wincing. But I
Yes.
wasn't in any pain anymore. I'm not in pain anymore, yet I still demonstrate. I thought, how can that be?
Wow. Yes. Learned
Unconsciously,
behavior. Mm.
but with regards pain, I don't want to sit here and say I never ever have any back pain, at all. I think the key difference is back to the safety again, though. If ever I have back pain now, sometimes in the morning as I get out of bed, or maybe doing a little bit of exercise, and I know I've overdone it a little bit on the bike, perhaps get a little bit of discomfort, and go, "Ooh, oh yeah, okay." Now I don't go into panic mode. I don't go into, "Oh my God, my back's been thrown out. I need to go and see a chiropractor. I need to go to the
Yeah.
doctor. I'm going to have to be off work. We can't go out to a restaurant." But that's what was happening for me
All
before.
that
And
fear causing it to ramp up.
just
Mm.
spiraling. And now it's a case of I go straight back into the work, and I'm
Mhm.
smiling now because I know it's worked for me. And it's simple things like, and I'll say this out loud, I'll say there's nothing wrong with my back. There's no structural issues.
Yeah.
I know what's happening. I've got an important meeting tomorrow or whatever, whatever, whatever. That's what's causing my pain. I'm a bit stressed about that. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with my back,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm fine. And within sometimes seconds, but oftentimes a few minutes, the pain's gone. I'm not even thinking about it because I'm on to the next activity. And that's
Yeah.
the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it's basically we are human. We have a mind and a body that are just connected.
Yeah.
You can't split them. So they are going to always happen. And it's like a barometer.
Yeah.
You speak to any of our practitioners, there's nobody who'd say, oh, I never have a symptom. Because the symptoms are just telling us, oh, there's something you're not dealing with very well.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to perfectly go around in a completely peaceful way without things not uh, triggering them in some way.
Yeah.
But like you said, the difference is actually going, oh, that's interesting. What's going on? And there are times that I will then realize, okay, much of it, maybe if I get a sore throat, for
Mm.
example, so not pain, but a
Mm.
sore throat is telling me I've taken too much on, there's too much going on. And
Mm.
therefore I will back off. I'll take time out, I'll have a hot bath or whatever it
Yeah.
happens to be, but I will increase my self-care.
Yeah.
So it's a clue, it's a cue to remind ourselves to do things. And sometimes I might then journal. Sometimes I will go off for a walk, and a mindful walk. It depends. But and yes, like you said, it can be seconds, it can be minutes, it could be a day. And I know, other therapists would say, Dr. Schubiner said when his father died, I think he said he had backache. When his mother died, he had neck ache, or might be the other way around. And it's just one of those things. It's then about the difference is we don't go into the fear, and that we are curious, and that we then take action. And then saying, you mentioned about, and then I do the work. Now I know what you mean by that, sort of like the understanding, the self-talk, the journaling, maybe some emotional awareness, somatic tracking, whatever it is that you find helpful. But would you agree that actually part of the work is just the understanding, and that having that understanding that we do now, we are less likely to push ourselves too far. We're not going to just ignore how we're feeling. So the reason we're not having, when symptoms pop up, they don't get a lot worse, is we're dealing with the emotions rather than ignoring them, pushing them down, as we would have done in the past, or carried on pushing through whatever we're doing in the day, in the week.
For me, it's that awareness of, not, if we think about depression, it's pressing all those emotions down and hiding them away. Well, they've got to go somewhere. So it's being aware of that and getting into action and doing the work in that sense. But I think you touched on it as well, though, is that self-care. We often talk about it, and life's busy, but that's the time where, like you said, with the sore throat and things, your immune system's taking a bit of a rock in. Right, I need to go off and do something to look after myself now, in order that I can feel better, then help others. Otherwise, it's
absolutely. I think that awareness is the real biggie, and for me, I am so aware now that whenever I'm triggered in some way, whenever I'm aware that there's an emotion surfacing, then I will do some emotional awareness or do some journaling. For me, it's not the work; it's just about self-care and about this understanding. Means you nip in and do things for self-care, self-soothing. I practice breath work. I do meditate. I go out and make sure that I get fresh air. I go out in the morning for the fresh air and the light every morning. So just things like that. And that's why any reading or personal development for me is very much all about work, because, yes, then we can share this for work as well. So it's all about not getting stuck into that belief we've got to charge through our day, ignore how we're feeling, repress how we're feeling. But no, it's lovely. I mean, I love the fact that you're now going on, like so many of our practitioners have also resolved their own symptoms and then gone through the training so they can do our training to then do this work. I love the fact that you're doing this, and it's going to help, obviously, your Macmillan cancer work as well.
There's I suppose sometimes what I have to do is contain my enthusiasm, because my wife says to me, I can see her that she's not doing this, but so, for example, I can remember being, going into the office one day, and there was a chap, and he just literally getting out of his car and looked like he was going to fall out of his car. And I said, "Oh, are you okay there?" And anyway, he'd had a back spasm, his lower back, and I helped him to the office. And as we were going, I said to him, how did this happen? What were you doing? Oh, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, putting my socks on after my shower. I said, "Oh, okay." And so I just said to him, I said, do you have to come to work today? He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, I've got a meeting, a big presentation. I said, "Oh, how long has this been going on?" He said, "Well, I've been planning it for weeks." And so you could see there was this picture already being built. Well, so I knew him, and I just gave him my phone number. He never rang me, but I said, I've had years of this, and it's oftentimes nothing physically wrong. But you can contact me at any time, and I'll be happy to talk through anything with you. But it's no surprise to me that you've got a big conference or meeting that you're planning, and that's causing quite a lot of stress, and that's probably where your pain's coming from. And I walked away from that thinking, "Oh, I wonder if I may have just helped my first person." It felt quite good. I'm not sure how he felt, other than he was in significant pain at the
It
time.
depends where he is on his journey as well, but at least you've sown a seed. But then that's us going in trying to rescue people, and we often too enthusiastic. I certainly was too enthusiastic to begin with. A lot of people feel that. I think I mentioned emotions too much in my family.
Yeah.
Anyway, is there anything that you particularly want to say before we finish, Adam, that you think would help people?
No, I just think it's what worked for me was to once I got to that point of realizing through the reading and looking at the TED Talks and the YouTube clips that there wasn't a structural issue, that no amount of surgery was gonna change my situation. That changed the mindset completely, and unbeknown to me even then at that time, that's what started the healing process.
Mm,
Then pulling together all the self-care activity that we talk about, and whatever works for people individually is to carry on with that, and try not to be too down and disheartened when sometimes the pain does return, because as you said earlier, we're just human, and that's
yeah,
very likely to happen at some point, but not to go into a blind panic when it does. And
right.
that would be the key difference,
Yeah,
really.
to be curious and to use it as a learning opportunity to go, okay, so
Absolutely.
what's going on now? And people sort of say, oh, I'm really scared about how easily these neural pathways are triggered again. But actually, the more they are triggered and the more we then calm things down, the more they become dormant.
Yeah,
So until gradually they do
absolutely.
calm down because they're not required anymore. But thank you so much, Adam. I know
Oh,
this will be a
thanks.
help to many people, and I look
Oh,
forward
thank
to
you.
you finishing your training so that you then are able to help more people.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Georgie. Been
You're welcome. Thanks very
enjoyable.
much.
Thank you.
Good.